Welcome to part 6 of the Yo Infantry Basics series. Today we'll be discussing urban combat, and a few core principles that will assist you in it. MOUT, CQB, and CQC are all military acronyms that you will hear which refer to combat in urban terrain. Whenever you hear these coming from your mission commander, anticipate the possibility of combat within an urban setting. The cramped conditions, numerous angles, and three-dimensional aspect of the battlefield make this type of combat especially difficult. The verticality of urban combat means that enemies can be found not only in front or beside you, but also above you. When operating in an environment such as this, you need to maintain a high state of readiness, constantly searching for threats at all times. In the next few minutes, we're going to go over some basic tactics and techniques that will greatly help you navigate the maze that is urban combat. The first technique that we'll cover is the application of spacing within an urban environment. While we have already covered spacing formations in previous videos, almost all of that information goes out the door once entering urban combat. The constricting nature of the terrain means that maintaining spacing based off distance alone can isolate and cut off members of your team. Remember that the whole point of spacing is to minimize the effects of heavy weapons should they engage you. While in open ground, the best way to do this is to spread out. In an urban setting, the nature of its terrain will often make this an impractical solution. To account for urban terrain, when judging spacing, we can use this handy rule of thumb. Only 2 men, or a buddy team, to any face of a building or within a single room. While this may be adjusted for larger buildings, such as the Chinaris Hospital, this applies well to the majority of Arma's medium and smaller sized buildings. Next, we'll talk about a simple buddy technique that allows 2 teammates to shoot in the same direction while in confined spaces, with no fear of hitting each other, called the high-low stack. The high-low stack is especially useful for looking around corners that might have an enemy around them, because this technique allows 2 teammates to shoot at them simultaneously instead of just one. To form a high-low stack, 2 teammates will line up, one directly behind the other. The lead, or low teammate, takes a crouched position, while the rear, high teammate, remains in a standing position, allowing both of them to shoot while not having to worry about hitting each other. It is crucial for the high buddy to be standing behind and not beside his low buddy, so that he doesn't block him from re-entering cover should he need to.
Reloading.
To initiate a high-low stack, communicate with your buddy that you are forming a high-low with him and which position you are taking so that he knows to take the other.
Shark, let's do a high-low stack on that corner. I'm high.
I'm low.
In the next part, we're going to talk about a pair of individual skills that will help you immensely. These are pieing and checking your corners. First off, we'll talk about pieing corners. Pieing a corner is where you slowly turn a corner, scanning for enemies as you do so. In a sense, pieing off the area, taking it in little chunks at a time. This allows us to isolate threats and take on enemies one at a time instead of all at once. In this scenario, we have 3 enemies just around the corner from our fire team. Neither side knows that their opponents are on the other side of the wall. As our first man comes around the corner, he rushes headlong into the enemy, doing little and getting himself killed. Now let's try pieing that corner instead. This time, as he comes around, he manages to kill the first enemy by singling him out and remains alive. From here, the team can take further steps, such as throwing a grenade, to eliminate the remaining enemy firing on the corner. When pieing, the farther away from a corner you are, the more control you have over what you expose yourself to. Finally, remember that all armor models are right-handed, so coming around a left side corner will always leave you a little less exposed as you try to come around. Try to use this whenever possible. Next, let's talk about checking corners. Whenever you move through an entrance, into a building or otherwise, the area you are moving into will almost always have a number of corners in it, usually 4 for a square room. These corners are important because they offer some of the best hiding spots around. This is because When you move through an entrance, these corners are often to your extreme left or extreme right, and hidden from view if you were to just walk straight into a room. As such, whenever you move through an entrance, make sure to check your left and right corners as you enter. By just glancing at corners as you enter, you will greatly increase your chances of detecting an enemy soldier. Many times during urban combat, your team leader will order you to form a stack, or stack up. A stack is used to ensure that all members of a team are both ready to enter a dangerous room, and that they are as close together as possible, to ensure that the team enters as one.
One ready.
To stack up, all members of the team line up behind the lead man along the face of the building, pressing themselves against one another. This puts the team in an extremely vulnerable position, and so as a team member, it is key that you correctly enter the stack as quickly as possible, and are alert, scanning for enemy threats. Just as with formations, everyone in the stack has an assigned sector to watch to make things as straightforward as possible. When stacked, the point man is watching the entrance, ready to engage anyone who tries to exit the structure. The next man is always looking directly over the point man's shoulder, scanning the rest of the building and slightly off to the side. After that, the remaining unwatched areas are divided between the remaining team members, with the last man covering the rear. It is important that you are proactive in ensuring that all directions are covered in order to keep your teammates safe and alive as you prepare to enter through the doorway.
Hello, my name's JB, and I'm going to give you a couple of principles you can use to take a room. Once your team leader gives you the order to move inside, your team breaches and enters the room. When breaching rooms, there are two key principles which will help you and your team immensely. The first is to get as many rifles into the room as possible simultaneously. And the second, to go towards the most dangerous direction once within the room. Our first principle, get into the room with as many rifles as you can simultaneously, ties directly into why we press against one another in the stack. We want to ensure that as we move through a doorway, we get all our rifles into the room as quickly as possible simultaneously, giving us the best chance to take down an enemy inside. In this first example, the soldier guarding the room has been ordered to do the best he can to shoot all of us as we come through the doorway. Even though he downed the first two, the team got the rifles in the room quick enough that he couldn't get everyone before they got him. Our second principle is, once you get through the door, cover towards the most dangerous direction. This simply means that you always cover towards the area that your team knows the least about. The best way to demonstrate this is with a few examples. In this first situation, we have a four-corner room with a door in the bottom right. With a team stacked up on the left side of the door, as the first man enters, the last area he sees is the bottom left corner. So with our principle in mind, that is the one he will move to and initially cover. As the second man comes in, the top right corner is now the least known, and he will move to the opposite of the first man while covering that corner. As corners are cleared, the remaining men enter the room and continue moving into line before moving forward and sweeping the entire room. Let's take a look at another example. In this case, the entrance to a room is in the center of the bottom wall, which will change up how the team covers. As the first man enters from the left, the least known corner is the one in the bottom left, as it is the last one he will see, so that's why he moves to. The second man in now moves to the corner in the bottom right, as there's a slight blind spot towards it when you enter the room. Now the third and fourth men will enter the room, covering the top left and then right corners. Do you see how that was different? The type of area and position of the door will determine which parts are the most dangerous direction, and you must learn to identify and adapt to these changes on the fly when in game. By following these tactics, you can greatly improve your performance and survivability in urban combat.
Key takeaways for this video should be the following. Our spacing rule of 2 per building phase. Forming a high-low stack with a buddy. Pieing off and checking corners. A basic stack and directions to watch. And finally, are two key concepts of room clearance. Get as many rifles into the door as quickly as possible, and always move towards the most unknown once within the room.